live, I believe. Okay. Hello. Welcome to our live stream, Ethical Business with Artisan Suppliers. I'm here with James from the Afghan Rug Shop. My name's Kate. I am from Afghanaid. I'm in the fundraising and comms department. And we're just going to have a nice conversation today. At 6 o'clock, Flore and Edmund from ISHKAR are going to join us for the second half of the conversation. So we've got James for the first half and ISHKAR for the second. First up, do you want to introduce yourself, James? Kind of let people know your journey into starting the rug shop and kind of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kate, and thanks, Afghanaid, for putting this on. It's very good of you, and very, very important that we all can communicate like this. Yeah, I served with the military in 2003, 2004 in Mazar-e-Sharif in the north of Afghanistan, part of the provincial reconstruction team. And it was during that time there that I'm getting some bad feedback here, Kate. Is that at your end or my end? That's better.
Has that stopped?
Yeah, it's gone. It's gone. It's the delay, I think. 1 second. Yeah, so I was out there in 2003, 2004 in Mazar-e-Sharif, and we were there in a security role. We weren't there to do any war fighting. We were effectively guests of the warlords, really, and it meant that we were out and about for weeks at a time, right across most of the 5 of the 6 main provinces in the north of the country. Stunning, absolutely stunning and privileged time to be there as well. So we got to meet chiefs of police and warlords and politicians, business people, and to try and keep our, ear to the ground for the either increasing or decreasing security situation. But during my time off, I developed a penchant for Afghan rugs and a fascination for a lot of the crafts that were there, but mainly the rugs. I sent back over 40 rugs during my 6 months when I was there through the British Forces postal system.
Oh, wow.
Because it was 2003. There's no social media as such. Smartphones didn't exist. I just thought that's the one and only time I would have to do that, and a legitimate thing to do as well. So I did. And then after my military career and after another 10 years working in central London, my wife got an opportunity for an HR contract up in the northwest. So I took something of a sabbatical for a year or two. And I get bored very quickly. And it was exactly the same time that a friend of mine saw a rug it's still on my floor here, actually, 20 years on, and said, "Oh, could you get me one of those?" And I thought it was a bit of a strange question. He said, no, could you find the guy that you told me you bought that from? Could you find him? Could you track him down and get me one? I thought, it's a bit of a challenge. So it took me 3 months. I started just by going on Google Street View and Googling Mazar-e-Sharif and randomly calling the numbers off the shop's phone numbers I could see on images on Google, which was quite entertaining. And emails and Facebook and social media. But ultimately, it was a message through Facebook. I'd managed to track down the interpreter, or an interpreter that knew my interpreter, because they're all from the same place. So it's a very small village kind of feel to Mazar-e-Sharif, you see.
Yeah.
And anyway, to cut a long story short, I got an address and a time, and we dialed in online, and there he was, the friend I'd been buying from, the guy who was the trusted trader that we used. We used lots of people. We dealt with lots of traders when we were there, but he was the one person that was probably the most honest we'd come across. And I said, look, I've got an idea. I'm thinking of, but he said, I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still trading. Let's do some business. So it took a while. I said, look, I don't know if it's going to work. Unknown to me, all of his family was saying, how can you trust this Mr. James? How do you know him? And my wife saying the same to me, how can you trust this Mr. Rafi? I said, well, I might be naive, but I do. I trust a man. I knew him for 6 months. I dealt with him for 6 months. He's my friend, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, but I'm going to take a punt. So we did. We figured out the Western Union, the money transfer. I sent $5, then $50, and he said he got it, which was great.
Yeah.
He then spent a few months trying to figure out the best way to get the freight to us, avoiding the old traditional routes of going out through middlemen across the border in Pakistan. And because every layer of individual you add to that system, the more and more expensive it gets. So we managed to, using apps on our phone, social media, photographs, live chat and stuff, we managed to really chat everything through properly. I looked at the UK end of stuff, so taxes, import duties, all the right proper things that you need to do at this end. Rafi looked at any kind of method he could get to get the rugs to me, and he finally, believe it or not, we used FedEx. There's a two-man. Yeah, well, he's a trusted trader on the NATO base at the airport of Mazar, as well as having a shop in town. So that gives him access to a two-man FedEx office.
Right.
It's not cheap, but that's where we get our freight. So we get half a ton of rugs comes every quarter at least. Obviously not at the minute, but so we started small, a few $100 went backwards and forwards, and one box of rugs came. And he was saying, "Oh, the quality's so much better than it was in 2003," and I thought I might have been part of the sales patter. But when I opened the first shipment, I was, compared to what I had from 2003, I was blown away. With the level of investment and support from people like yourselves and other NGOs, the consistency in the output and what they produce now, because you've got individual families doing weaving and dyeing and cutting, not a family trying to do the whole process in one. The industry is so big now that the consistency across every aspect of the rug production is just superb. Yeah. So, and he said to me, the prices are still the same, James. The prices haven't changed since 2003. At which point my wife said, "I'm starting to trust this guy a bit more now, because he could have told you the prices are doubled and there's nothing he could do about it." So 5 years on, I consider him family and his friends and my weavers. They're family to us now. And we very quickly gained premises in the centre of Hebden Bridge on the High Street, exactly where I wanted. It just kind of fell into place. It seemed right, so we gave it a try.
Amazing. I mean, it really sounds like an incredible journey to get where you are, and especially having such a personal link with someone that you work with is such a lovely element to it. I guess the next question would be what? Well, obviously you're one of you're the only fair trade Afghan rug provider in the country. What does that mean as such? What does it mean to be Label Step Fair Trade approved?
Label Step is a Swiss-based fair trade organisation that purely focuses on carpets. Most of the fair trade organisations go as far as cotton, but it kind of stops there. So fair trade, Label Step as they're known, run by Rito Ashwand in Switzerland, kind of plugged that gap. Now they do some remarkable work, not just in Afghanistan, but they work across the whole region, from Iran, India, Kyrgyzstan, Morocco, Nepal, Pakistan, Turkey, right across the region. And for us to be a fair trade, there's only one other retailer. They were a wholesaler until recently, so we were the only fair trade retailer of Afghan rugs in the UK. We still are the only, in fact, we're the only rug shop outside of Afghanistan that we know of in the world that purely sells Afghan rugs and killams.
Oh, wow.
You can get Afghan rugs here, there, in other shops, but they'll sell Moroccan and Indian and Iranian rugs. We don't. We just purely focus on Afghan products. So being Label Step approved means that twice a year, they have representatives in Mazar-i-Sharif and in Kabul, but twice a year, our weavers, of which Label Step, at the last count, there was 60-something families on their books that they knew were supporting us. They're inspected twice a year. They stand for basically good working conditions, fair pay for the rug production, and they're working with the World Bank to give a kind of try and fix a good wage, a slightly higher wage for the weavers. They're against abusive child labour. They support independent inspections of all of their processes as well, and they try and improve and encourage environmentally friendly production as much as possible. Not always possible in that part of the world yet. So that's what they stand for. But more than that, it's not just something that we look at once a year or so. Just recently, they just gave huge, 2 months worth of rice, 2 months worth of oil, cooking oil, food to 600 weaving families in Mazar-i-Sharif, because they don't get grants like we do, and furloughed doesn't exist in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So they've been handing out food parcels. Our weavers and their families, they get free medical checks, and our weavers get physiotherapy. They often get a lot of bad backs from working on the floor looms, and they're so well looked after. So between Label Step on one side looking after our weavers directly, that's absolutely the right thing to be part of and to help fund, and we donated last week as well. Wasn't a huge amount, but it was what we could afford to help pay for the food parcels on one side. But then the wider community around the weavers is where you guys come in. It's where Afghanaid comes in. That's why we are passionate about supporting you doing that as well, because being able to educate, and donations are one thing, but education, which you do brilliantly in that region, is so much more important, to give other family members the farming skill, knowledge about looking after their goats properly, the tools to do farming, chickens, teaching women and young ladies, how to run a business, how to become seamstresses, how to get their products to market. So between that you do and what Label Step provide on the other side of supporting directly the welfare of our weavers, it's just a brilliant little marriage between the three. And then when you add in the mix Turquoise Mountain, who I'm sure ISHKAR will talk about as well soon, who support artisans in that region, it feels right. It's just the right thing to be doing.
Yeah, well, completely. And the way in which it's kind of either side of your work as well. It's not just, as you say, it's a marrying of the two.
Yeah.
But obviously through that, it can't be easy at times working or sourcing from Afghanistan. Obviously, there are inevitably a lot of difficulties when you're conducting business there. What kind of issues do you face kind of day to day that people would have over a usual running and sourcing of product? And what kind of advice would you have for people who were seeking to conduct like ethical business in the same kind of manner?
Be patient. That's what I would say. Be patient. We're lucky because the kind of things that we import, the kind of unique products that we've got, people don't mind waiting for. They have to wait, to be perfectly honest. If they want a bespoke rug, it might take over a year to make, and people will wait for that. We've got a lot of stock, and there's a lot of stock that we have. There's a lot of stock that we have access to that's already made.
Yeah.
But the bespoke stuff as well is difficult. Now, strangely, getting rugs from Afghanistan is the easiest part of my business. When it came to setting up, the hardest thing was convincing UK banks I wasn't dealing with the Taliban or some kind of agency or government sector that was likely to be taken over. That was the biggest, risk, top of the risk register. Sorry, not interested.
Yeah.
The biggest issue was trying to convince UK banks, but we did. NatWest ended up being very supportive. Plug them there because they were superb compared to all the others. So getting the rugs isn't the issue. It's the turnaround time. We're not John Lewis. You can't come in on a Monday and pick up a thing on it. It's not like Next it'll deliver stuff the next day. We bring it in before midnight. We get deliveries every quarter, roughly. Sometimes faster, sometimes a bit longer. But when Rafi packages stuff to send, it's anywhere between, in fact, 8 days was the fastest we've ever had anything. But the longest was nearly 2 months. But when you say to a customer, I'm terribly sorry, who's perhaps not getting irate, but they're asking where their lovely 6 meter square rug is, and you say, well, the Taliban's delayed the delivery by 33 days because they're fighting on the roads with the government troops. They go, oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, we'll wait. And it becomes a little bit more special about waiting for that to arrive. But that's our biggest issue is that lag time. So when it comes to scaling a business, it's tricky. You need to take a much, much bigger step up. So the next thing to do, if we wanted access to stock faster, we'd probably have to have an ISO container. And that's a lot of rugs that we simply can't afford. But an ISO container or a portion of an ISO container filled with rugs. So we would have that standing stock in the UK. So it's time, really. It's time. There's a bit of a language barrier. Rafi's taught himself English. He's one of 7 brothers. His youngest brother, who's 19, who was like a toddler, a baby when I was there. He speaks very good English. But Rafi and I, we chat regularly. Some things are lost in translation, so that's where the picture messages really helps. Patience is the one thing. No, in terms of running the business, it's the same concerns you have running any business. It's just how I have a slightly more unusual supply chain, really.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's one way of putting it. And kind of off the back of that, what are you finding in terms of that supply chain with the current scenario that's going on? Obviously, I'm assuming it's been absolutely stopped for now, but how do you think it's going to change your work subsequently? Do you think, it's something you're going to be able to adapt to long term, or is it something that, has ultimately changed your sourcing process?
It's not changed our sourcing. It has stopped completely. The tap has been turned off until such time that the base allows Rafi back in to then send. We've got I think I've got 150 square meters of kiln, just a kiln alone, waiting to come. It's all been purchased, it's all ready to go, but it can't get to me yet. So we've got a finite amount of stock in this. We're quite well stocked at the minute, not as much as I'd like, but we're getting there. I think it's a good question, Kate, in terms of the longer term thing. I don't think, I mean, this is unprecedented, really, in terms of that global shutdown is hiccups in supply chains, changes in supply chain you expect. You have to you have to develop your methods. We're nowhere near where we were 5 years ago. We're doing all sorts of different things because your business evolves. But our sourcing remains the same. Our routes remain the same. I think if we had to, we could probably get, a larger quantity here by road. It would take months, rather than we currently use air freight. It's the only method we've got at the minute. It's the only sort of non-environmentally friendly part of our sourcing and ethical chain. But it's needs must at this stage. So we could potentially push something by road, but I don't want to. That's a whole area we've looked at in the past that's got multiple layers of corruption and all sorts of other things that are involved in tax and local tax. I mean, whereas at the minute we can avoid that whole traditional route that people used to use over the decades to bring rugs to the UK, because it goes FedEx, Camp Marmel, Afghanistan, by air, Bagram, Dubai, Paris, Stansted within 48 hours.
Yeah.
So we've kind of circumvented that traditional supply chain. We could go back to using that, but I think it would be very detrimental to us. So I'm just fingers crossed really at the minute that within a month or two, that chain will reopen again and the supply will pick back up and we'll fill the shelves quickly. We're okay for now. We can weather this for another month or two. We've got enough stock to last another month or two. It's not a problem. But I don't think it'll change the way we do business longer term. It's changed the way we've looked at what we're doing in the UK.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so what's happened in terms of your UK-based selling, obviously at Hebden Bridge? Are you completely online now, or?
Yes, yeah. We're still selling online, we're still shipping globally, but the shop is closed, the shop is shut. Obviously, we're looking to reopen late July. We can only open when the pubs, clubs, restaurants, and bars, once the footfall's back in town. It's a very much a tourist town.
Yeah.
It's like a little Knightsbridge up here in the north. It's a lovely little part of the world. If anyone's visited, you must come and visit. It's great for a weekend away. But tourism's a big part of our trade. A lot of local trade, well, don't get me wrong, but there's no one walking up and down the high street because all the shops and bars and restaurants and accommodations closed. So until they open, we won't reopen. But so to bridge that gap, we're purely online. We managed to arrange finance just before we closed, so we can offer anyone buying online up to 6 months at interest free. So that's a new aspect we've never really looked at it in the past. I suppose we've been a little bit, these kind of times just jog you a little bit to sort of say, are you being complacent? And yes, we were in a few areas, I'll admit that. So we now offer finance on products up to £1,000. You can take up to 6 months interest free to pay for that. Hopefully we'll extend that to 12 months interest free. The company won't allow us until COVID's finished. But it's a start. We've already had people purchasing who wouldn't perhaps be able to afford a £200 kiln who have bought it on finance. And that's great because it means they get what they want. And we're still trading. We've also pushed the social media a lot more. We're doing a lot more posts. We've got LinkedIn accounts now that we never used to have, because I used to think that was for employment and recruitment, but it's a network. What are the networks are we not looking at? So it's little things like that that have nudged us down that road of what are we not doing? What have we perhaps had not had the time to do in the past that we've now got the time to do? So we're just trying to exploit that a bit more, and we're paying for a few more social media adverts. They're not expensive, and they reach thousands of people each time. So it's little things like that that are kind of, what can we do to just remind people or educate people that we are there? And that's what we've been trying to do. And then once they know we're there, how do we make it easier for them to buy stuff from us? Because some of our stuff is expensive, don't get me wrong, but stuff starts from £5. So it's not, there's something for everybody, really. But people don't realize that. They think rugs will be an expensive, pretentious shop. We're not. We're a very welcoming place with stuff that's very affordable.
Well, I think that's also the whole thing. We had a question sent in asking about how the market is going to grow and change for you guys over the next 5 to 10 years. But I think it always comes down to the fact that because you're sourcing such valuable products, and as you were talking about earlier, the route it takes to get to the UK, the fact it's such a, almost memorable thing, even receiving the rug and knowing the journey it's been on. It's kind of one of those, it's that price, and it's something that's so valuable for a reason.
Just before COVID, we are the next 5 years for us. We see growth in the larger rugs. We can do your beautiful 6 meter heraldic rug. We can have your family crest made onto a rug, and some of them look stunning. Regimental crests are very popular at the minute. You send us an image of what you want and we can get it put into a rug, and the quality of them, some of them is absolutely exquisite. So the growth in the personalized larger rugs for larger homes, for bigger country houses, for that kind of thing, it is we're really starting to see a shift into that direction, because people now know we're there. They've got the confidence to buy from us now. They can see we're established. They can see our status. They can see our feedback and reviews and things. So the larger rugs and the bespoke rugs, is where we're headed sort of longer term. To be honest, that's where the extra money is. As soon as we start selling bigger rugs like that, we can give people like you guys more donations as well. The smaller rugs are great, and yes, they pay the bills and they pay the staff. The other thing that's also slowed us down in terms of expanding a bit quicker into that area in the next few years has been the exchange rate. We buy in the dollar. So since the Brexit vote 2 and a bit years ago, nearly 3 years ago, we were doing quite well the first 2 years, and we were regularly giving you guys donations, and we were looking to expand in certain areas, and that just stopped. So we're paying the bills, we're paying the staff, and we're getting by. But when the exchange rate goes from 1.6 to 1.1 and then pretty much stays there, we've lost about 40 or 50 grand in the last 2 years because of that. And that money should be partly in your pockets, and it should be partly in our shop expansion plan. So there were signs of it recovering just before COVID. I think the housing market was looking a little bit more buoyant just before COVID. It's that confidence in a new government, whether you've got confidence in the actual government itself or not, but it's that confidence that we've got 5 years of stability, I think, that when you see the other markets start to move, when people move house, they buy rugs. So we're quite closely tied to the housing market, oddly. So a recovery of the exchange rate would also be the massive change for us. But we are still managing to grow very slowly using all those other methods that we chatted about. We just need it to move on. As soon as COVID is gone or has moved to one side and we can socialise and the shop can open, and as soon as the exchange rates can recover, then we'll be in a far stronger position. But we've weathered this so far. We're doing okay. We've weathered 2 physical floods in the shop. We've been through worse.
I was going to say,
you don't get a chance to prepare for a flood. It just happens almost overnight. Whereas at least we had a little bit of warning with COVID coming.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, with the year you've had so far, you really are doing incredible to be weathering this literal storm when that flood hit you earlier in the year. Well, for now, I think I will just check if there's any questions for you, James.
Sure.
But I think the only question I've had pop up here is how do you ensure your staff and artisans work safely? I assume this must be prior to COVID, the idea of
yeah, of course, yeah. It's label step mainly. It's label step that do it. Rafi, in terms of the guy I buy from, is a very decent man. He was short of money last month because he'd just given $500 in Afghanistan. Is a lot of money. He'd given all of that to the mosque, he'd given it out to the poorer families around Mazar-e-Sharif, because he said they have no food with COVID. So he's got really high morals, the guy, which is great, because I know I'm buying from the right person. So he himself supports as many people as he possibly can. He sent me an email about 12 months after we'd started trading saying, "You have no idea how many families in Mazar-e-Sharif you're supporting." And I was like, oh, it's a lovely thing to hear, but it's also extremely daunting when you're just starting out. And we've continued to be able to do that. Label step ensure more than twice a year, actually. It's listed as twice a year. There's more than twice a year. That they do random inspections, and they're welcome to. They understand in Afghanistan who they are. They're locals anyway. They will go and inspect. Then they're looking for certain things and certain telltale signs of any mistreatment or anything like that. Fortunately, that part of the world, it's not the wealthiest part of the world, of course, but that part of the world, it's a family traditional craft. It's not something that in other countries you might find people being forced into factories to do. So it is a lot more easily monitored. And a lot of the weavers and cutters and spinners and dyers have moved into and concentrate in and around Mazar now. They used to be much further out into the hills. Akch is a centre of it. Shebegun's a centre. Andhoy, Maimana, but they go to all of those areas and they check on the majority of the weavers that we get supplies from. We get photographs, we get written reports, we can physically see our weavers receiving physiotherapy treatment, which is brilliant. We always ask, send us the photographs, send us the report. And we have got great confidence in what they do for us in that respect. So between that and then getting the ground truth from you guys when you're out there, when you see, because there's a lot of crossover there. So we see from you as well in the reports that come out from your visits to northern Afghanistan exactly what that ground truth is, and we've got great confidence in that the people we're supporting are being looked after. Label Step didn't have to give out tens of thousands of dollars of food parcels to 600 weaving families, but they did because it's the right thing to do. So we know the families, above and beyond what's required in terms of the written policy from yourselves and Label Step, we always go that little bit further to try and do what we can. And it's the reports, the photographs from you and from Label Step that gives us a confidence that our weavers are being properly cared for.
Yeah. Well, that's the most important thing really about this whole discussion, isn't it? Is transparency and knowing sort of where everything's coming from. And it's great to hear that you can, well, it's amazing that you get those kind of reports from them that you can see firsthand.
Way more detail than we ever thought we'd get. So it's really comforting.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, James.
You're welcome.
This whole hour has kind of come to an end now. So what I will do is, to all of you watching, I'll just flick to another screen, and then when we come back, I will be with Flore and Edmund from ISHKAR. But for now, thank you so much for joining us, James.
Thank you very much.
Head to the Afghan Rug Shop website and check out what they've got going on. It's really beautiful. Yeah. And you've heard all the reasons why you should invest in one of their beautiful kilims or rugs. So thanks, James.
Take care. Thank you, Kate.
Hi everyone, we're back. This is Flore and Edmund from ISHKAR. They're the co-founders of ISHKAR, and they're just going to say a little introduction about how they came about founding ISHKAR itself and their journey to creating the business.
Yeah, so we both founded ISHKAR in 2016. We'd been living in Afghanistan for 3 years. We were working for Turquoise Mountain at the time, which for those of you who don't know, Turquoise Mountain is an NGO which is restoring the old city of Kabul and supporting the craft sector in Afghanistan. And we'd been in Afghanistan for 3 years at that point, and it was time to leave Afghanistan. It's quite a tiring place to live after a few years, and that was a particularly stressful period. But leaving the country, wanted to keep a strong connection to it. And one of the reasons for that is that we feel that Afghanistan is often misrepresented in the news, or it's poorly understood. Most of our experience there was spent enjoying Afghanistan's amazing scenery, getting to know its rich culture and history. We felt that story wasn't really very well understood outside the region. So we wanted to launch a business which would bring that story to the world. And we started in that pursuit by selling craftsmanship. And in its latest iteration, ISHKAR is now 4 years on. We are now running trips to Afghanistan as well as running monthly events in our London shop. But in the very earliest days, it started with craftsmanship.
Yeah. That's really fantastic, and to hear where it came from and the whole kind of idea of it being from you having so much experience out there, but also wanting to kind of send a message about your experience of Afghanistan. I guess relating to that, Obviously, a root thing of your business is the idea that you value sort of slow production and preserving traditional Afghan cultural practices so much in order to kind of platform the culture. Could you talk a little bit more about, like, why you think slow production is so valuable in the kind of era we're in terms of mass production and valuing the kind of craftsmanship and artisan work?
Yeah. Well, I think it's in line with what's happening everywhere. Afghanistan is not unique in a way for that, but there's been a lot of cheap items replacing household items that we could hold on for a couple of decades, and then, at least for Afghanistan, the most visible example is, for example, the glass blowers. So in the 70s, there were at least 12 workshops of glass blowers, and they were selling glasses to the local markets, international market, tourists coming on the hippie trail through Herat to the north of Afghanistan, and then of course they were replaced by Chinese glasses that were cheaper. They were more solid, and then we thought it would be. And now, when we went in Herat a couple of years back, there was one workshop actually doing these glasses. So we thought it was also important to make sure that this tradition was kept alive, that he could be able to recruit new apprentices, and that recipe for making handmade glasses didn't just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to stress how precarious some of these craft traditions are. I think we take for granted the existence of a lot of crafts. And in a place like Afghanistan, many really are teetering on the edge of falling away forever, although they've been practiced for hundreds of years. So, yes, the glasses were under threat. Then now, I think it's been stabilised in the last few years through retailers. I know that the Afghan Rug Shop also supports Afghanistan's glass blowers, and that's really important for keeping these glasses alive. But if you look across other crafts, ceramics, there's really only a few ceramicists producing high quality ceramics left in Afghanistan. Even certain types of jewellery, these are really precarious traditions, and they need quite a lot of support to keep them alive.
Yeah. And then, obviously, coming from that, it must be so difficult to actually find the artisans that you source from at points when it's something is so, becoming so rare and as you say, precarious. How do you first, initiate links with these people? Is it through knowing people or hearing about? Do you just travel to the areas, or?
So we were really lucky, as I mentioned at the beginning, that we worked for Turquoise Mountain for a few years. And of course, Turquoise Mountain supports artisans throughout Afghanistan. So through Turquoise Mountain, we met incredible artisans, built relationship directly with them, or through Turquoise Mountain. So that's some of the artisans that we work with. And then others were met through when we're traveling in Afghanistan, really looking for craftsmen, asking around, asking friends of friends of friends if they've heard of any artisans that wanted to work with us and wanted to export their craftsmanship to international markets, basically.
Yeah.
And we work with other charities as well. So we're working with the Norwegian Refugee Council at the moment on the collection of kilims, and I think NGOs in Afghanistan, like Afghanaid, have very strong local networks, and so we often find it's really, really helpful to partner with NGOs.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that such a way that you find sort of stronger links in terms of their networks? I mean, what's your typical relationship with an NGO look like where you work?
I think we tried to find a balance where we both support each other and both have our strengths. So NGOs, in our typical relationship, we don't just do this in Afghanistan, we also do it in a number of other countries. Yeah. NGOs often provide connections to the artisans, they provide quality control. And then also one point that James referenced earlier was, payments. It's very difficult to pay artisans directly due to the problems surrounding banks being sanctioned. So we pay NGOs, which then distribute the money to the artisans, and that way we know exactly where our money is going and ensure that it finds itself in the right place. And then on our side, what we're able to do is we have strong connections with customers. We have a sales platform, but we also work very closely with NGOs to feedback on design, any signals that we're getting from the market about what products work and don't work, and then we really feed that information back into their program, so that private sector development programs in Afghanistan aren't just simply designed by NGOs, but also by people who have genuine commercial skin in the game. And I think that really helps both parties.
Aspects of it, feeds into each other, as James was saying earlier as well. So I guess, obviously, considering you guys have built such a successful business, what would be your main advice to someone who is seeking to conduct ethical business in general? Like, where would you start if you went back and did it again and could, change your path, if anything? Where would you start, and kind of what are the main difficulties you face?
I think the main thing is really you need to have some kind of a link with either the country you're going to work with, the product that you're going to sell, the person who's making the item. So it can either be in London or in Timbuktu, but it's important that there is some kind of relationship built and trust built. A lot of sort of ethical business is based on, it's very difficult to measure ethical businesses, and even if you're transparent business and if you try as much as possible to communicate to the customers about how you do business, what's important is that there is a trust between the supplier or the maker with you, and can tell you about how it's being made, and can tell you about the number of hours being spent on a particular product, and can tell you also about what is difficult about using a particular material that's only found locally, for example. And so you can then relay this information to your customers in a very accurate way, and just straightforward. And so that's the first thing, is I think making sure that this link and this trust exists before you do anything, and that you really enjoy every single bit of it. James talked a bit about it, about the logistics and the different how to bring things from one place to another. And again, it can be in London or Paris or anywhere, but you need to have an understanding of the whole chain, the value chain, sort of from the sourcing to the shipping, and making sure you keep your eyes on every single bit of this moving chain, basically.
And I think another thing that's often overlooked when people set up ethical businesses is they start from the ethical question first. It's how can I create an impact? And actually, I think sometimes it's useful to look at it from another perspective, which is how can I create a commercially successful business? Because if you don't get that right, then the impact you make is limited and will only last a short period of time. So I think we've definitely learned over the last 4 years that you have to stay true to your values, but you also have to be flexible and adapt your business to make sure that you're bringing in enough sales that you can support your mission.
Yeah, so that you have longevity, of course. Speaking of longevity, how are you coping under coronavirus at the moment? What kind of impact has it been having on you guys and your kind of day-to-day work, both for your artisans, but also for you guys who are based in the UK? What's your kind of day-to-day looking like at the moment?
So I think starting with sort of our partners, so the artisans. Of course, they can't really get to the workshops. They can't really do lots of things. They're exactly like us, confined in their homes. And so we sort of delayed as much as possible shipping. We asked them to send us voice notes about how they're living confinement, because it also helped us even to understand what it was like, and just going a bit beyond what we could read in the news about what was the reality in Afghanistan for an Afghan living in Kabul or an Afghan living in Herat or Mazar. And then what we did for our business, because our sales started to go a bit more slowly than planned, we organized an auction that just finished actually on Sunday with bigger items, samples, things that we had in our showroom in London, and we thought it was a good occasion. Lots of people are staying time behind their computers, so it was a good way as well to show them other things that were on our websites. We also did various sort of marketing techniques to basically get people involved and interested, and then on another sort of slightly different way, not related to craftsmanship, but for COVID, we really wanted to support a hospital in Kabul. So we did sort of a fundraising for them as well in parallel.
Yeah. And how do you think it's going to affect you more long term? Obviously, we can't really understand where we are at the moment and where it's going to kind of be in the next couple of months. But what are you kind of projecting long term, especially for your workers? Are there going to have to be, special safety measures that you're going to have to introduce, or are you very much unsure at the moment?
Yeah, I think on the production side, it's quite difficult to imagine how it's going to play out. I think it will be slow, at least for the next 6 months. But I'm sure, over time I'm sure it will go back to relative normality. The biggest challenge for us really is we launched our travel arm last year, so we're taking a number of trips out to Afghanistan, to a place called Bandi Amir, which is in the centre of Afghanistan. It's a very beautiful, very safe part of the country. And there's huge uncertainty over that side of the business, whether travel will be allowed and whether we'll be able to continue operating normally.
And going back to the craftsman, the auction that we did and the various sort of marketing campaign that we did allow us to continue ordering and to continue sort of making sure that money is still flowing to Afghanistan, and then they will make when they can make, and they will ship when they can ship. But at least it's not just stopping any kind of sort of financial support to the artisans there.
Yeah.
I think one benefit of craft is also that a lot of the production is done at home already, or in workshops which are quite small for 2 or 3 people. It's not large manufacturing plants, so we do think some, particularly with our jewellers, that quite a lot of production will still be able to take place in a way that's safe.
Okay. So I'm now going to pitch the same it's a similar question to what James was asked earlier, but it's kind of more long term. How do you see the market growing for you guys over the next sort of 10 to 15 years? How do you see it changing? How do you see people valuing, kind of really personal, as we were talking about earlier, the kind of items that have taken a journey and can really show and platform Afghan culture? How do you see that, changing over the next 10 years?
I think there will be more and more customers interested in ethical products, and especially if they can be a bit cheaper. So if there's more demand, of course, the products can be a bit cheaper, and then in turn will allow more customers to afford ethical products. So there'll be an increase in demand, or at least that's what we're seeing, and that's the trend that we're really seeing with our own customers and how we're saying. But there'll also be more competition, because of course then more and more small businesses, but also bigger businesses, which is great, will have to take on board more sort of a more ethical approach to doing business. And so then we'll just have to be better at what we do, and we'll have to stay transparent. We'll also have to sort of communicate as much as possible with the customers, with our partners on the ground, and not just adapting to this change in trend, both on the business side and on the customer side.
There's also this cycle that seems to happen with craft, where it comes into vogue and then falls away and then comes back again. We're on the sort of 4th or 5th craft movement now, where people have flooded back towards craft after a period of mass production. And I think for the moment, at least, there's quite a lot. There's still a lot of interest around craft. I think the more time we spend on our phones on kind of smooth, flat, textureless surfaces, spending time on our laptops in apartments which are kind of minimalist and clean. I think the more people search for texture and for personality in the objects they have around them. So I think for now at least there's, it looks quite buoyant, the craft market, but it does seem to happen in kind of 20, 30 year cycles where craft then starts to fall out of taste. So it's difficult to predict, but I think for now at least we're in a good place.
Yeah. And when, when these kind of things, when, we become profitable and craft becomes, something that people really invest in, and as we say, over the next 10 years, when you start to grow and have a lot more interest, how does that then kind of translate in a kind of real level for your artisans? What does that kind of look like for them? If something's booming, how does it really translate for them?
Well, for them, they can, what's amazing is basically being able to grow their business. So I think it's important to always compare Afghan artisans to French or British artisans. If they're selling more of what they're making, then they can either take on board an apprentice, they can recruit additional people in their workshop. They take less holidays if it needs, then they have, it's as if they have their small business as well. We are a small business, a chain of small businesses. Mm-hmm. I think then it's just making sure that they prepare. So we always try as much as possible to order before Christmas, way before Christmas, because we know that's a big period where they will have to make quite a lot of things, and it's constantly communicating with them about seasonality, about this is a product that's really working, this is going to be a season that's really working. We're going to have an article in this newspaper that might mean that we'll have more orders coming through. So it's just basically being able to communicate and allowing them to grow exactly like we grow. So which is great.
And I think in the sort of next 10 years, we'll see a massive shift where artisans in Afghanistan and other countries where we work will begin selling more directly towards customers. Mm-hmm. And our role will be very different from, finding an item in the bazaar and then bringing it to the UK to sell. Actually, our role is much more as a designer and a curator of objects rather than simply an importer of them. So I think, who knows what will happen with Afghanistan and peace process, but if there is peace and there is economic development, then it will happen very quickly that artisans in Afghanistan are selling directly to customers in Europe and in North America, which they're really not doing that much now.
Yeah. And in terms of that, speaking about, if the peace process goes as we hope it should, where will you kind of then sit in terms of ensuring that Afghan culture is platformed? Obviously, then it opens up a huge opportunity for them to sell. Do you have kind of plans as a business as to how you'll help them kind of access those new markets?
Well, what's nice about what we've found recently is that people, sort of artisans are using us more as a platform than, there's a way where they're writing to us on Instagram saying, I've made this particular ring, or I've made this particular thing. Mm-hmm. Is this something of interest? Do you think that would work? How much do you think that could cost? Do you think so that we're already seeing it as us being a platform for them? And of course, if they're the ones doing everything from design to making to pricing, then there's a bigger percentage of sales that goes back to them because there is less work on our end, and so we could then become more of a platform as well for a lot of these artisans that have more and more products to actually sell to international markets.
Mm-hmm. Let me just check if there's any more questions for you guys. See if the audience have got anything to ask me. I've got one here. This came in from Instagram. Asking how do you ensure sort of health and safety regulations for workers in Afghanistan? What kind of guidelines do you have in place, and how do you kind of ensure transparency?
Yeah, so similar to James, we work for our carpets. We also through Turquoise Mountain, we have the label fair trade certification, which deals with some of that. But also, this is another reason that we work with NGOs such as Turquoise Mountain and the Norwegian Refugee Council, as they help ensure that workplaces are safe and secure. But yeah, Afghanistan doesn't have health and safety regulations in the way that we do in the UK, and so often we rely on working with local NGOs that help ensure those environments are safe.
Of course. Okay. Do you guys have anything else coming up in the near future that you want people to hear about before we?
We're relaunching our website in a week's time, we've basically completely revamped the business through this website. So it would be great if people checked it out.
Do you guys have any stories about individuals who work with individual artisans on your website that you go and check out?
Yeah, exactly. We've got a partners page which has, I think there must be like 20 or 30 stories of the different artisans we're working with. So there's a lot of content about Afghan culture and Afghan, much more than just craftsmanship in our work. It's supposed to be more of a platform for content related to Afghanistan. So so expect it next Wednesday.
We'll look out for it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks so much to everyone who's listening at the moment. I hope you've all enjoyed this discussion and have learned something new or been inspired. Obviously, just from an Afghanaid point of view, if you'd like to make a voluntary donation to support our work, we would be so grateful. Our teams on the ground have reached 1,500 communities so far, and circulating COVID awareness courses and information about hand washing and hygiene. So any contributions that would help us be able to reach more vulnerable people will be extremely, extremely appreciated. You can find more information on our website, but also make sure you check out ISHKAR's website and James's website with the Afghan Rug Shop, as we said earlier. And a massive thank you again, guys, for joining us. And
thank you so much for hosting.
No worries. I mean, I hope it's the start of something more hosting live virtual panel. I mean, as much as coronavirus isn't great, we're all jump these technological hurdles. Not that we have with too much today, but
it was really great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.